Lisa Grant sat at her desk on the research ship Harmony's Edge. The space around her was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. She had been listening to radio signals from deep space for 3 years now. Most days she heard nothing but static and the background noise of the universe. But today was different. A weak signal came through her equipment. At first she thought it was just more space noise. Then she heard it again. It had a pattern. Someone or something was trying to send a message. Lisa's heart started beating faster. She adjusted her equipment and listened more carefully. The signal was coming from very far away, so far that it had taken over 1,000 years for the radio waves to reach Earth. The signal was old, but it was definitely made by someone intelligent. She called Captain Jake Morrison right away. "Captain, you need to come to the radio room," Lisa said over the ship's communication system. "I think I found something big." Captain Morrison arrived 10 minutes later with Dr. Amy Torres and Dr. Carl Baker. Amy was the best language expert on the ship. Carl knew more about alien life than anyone else in the fleet. "Play it again," Morrison said. Lisa played the signal. It was a series of beeps and tones that repeated every few minutes. The pattern was complex but clearly artificial. No natural process in space could make sounds like this. "How far away is it coming from?" Morrison asked. "The Kepler 442 system," Lisa replied. "About 1,200 light-years from Earth." Dr. Torres leaned forward. She had been studying alien languages for 20 years, even though humans had never met any aliens. "Let me work on this," she said. "If this is a language, I can figure out what they're saying." For the next 6 hours, Amy and Carl worked together. Amy tried to find patterns in the sounds while Carl analyzed what kind of beings might make these noises. Slowly, they began to understand pieces of the message. "It's a distress call," Amy said finally. "They're asking for help." "Help with what?" Morrison asked. Carl looked worried. "Something they call the Devourers. From what I can understand, these Devourers are destroying their worlds. They eat everything. Planets, people, entire solar systems." Amy nodded. "But here's the strange part. They're not just asking anyone for help. They specifically want help from the third planet of the Sol system. They want help from Earth." Morrison frowned. "How do they even know about us?" "They mention our radio and television broadcasts," Amy explained. "They've been listening to us for years. They know about our wars, our military, our history of fighting. They call us something that translates to warriors of the Deathworld," Carl added. "They think Earth is what they call a Deathworld, a planet so dangerous that only the strongest creatures can survive there. They believe that makes us the best fighters in the galaxy." Morrison was quiet for a long time. Then he picked up his communication device and called Earth. The message would take hours to reach home, but this was too important to wait. Admiral Helen Cross received Morrison's message at Earth Defense Command. She was a tough woman who had spent 40 years in the military. She had fought in 3 wars and commanded Earth's space fleet for the last 10 years. The message from the Harmony's Edge was the most important communication she had ever received. Aliens existed. They were in trouble, and they wanted Earth's help. Cross gathered her best officers for an emergency meeting. The room was full of generals, admirals, and scientists. They all listened to the alien message that Morrison had sent. "What do we know about this Kepler 442 system?" Cross asked. General Pete Walsh pulled up a star chart. "It's got 5 planets. 3 of them could support life. If there really are aliens there, it's probably a pretty big civilization." "And these Devourers?" Cross asked. Dr. Susan Cole, Earth's top expert on space threats, spoke up. "We have no idea what they are. But if the aliens are right, and these things really do eat planets, then they're the biggest threat the galaxy has ever seen." Cross made her decision quickly. "We're going to help them." The room was silent. Everyone knew what this meant. Earth had never sent a military mission outside the solar system. They had never fought aliens. They were about to start humanity's first interstellar war. "I'm putting together a special mission," Cross continued. "We'll use the new experimental ship, the Defiant. It has our newest jump drive technology. It can get to Kepler 442 in 3 months instead of 1,200 years. She looked around the room. "I need volunteers. This mission is dangerous. We don't know what we're going to find out there. We might not come back." The response was immediate. Every officer in the room volunteered. Cross chose carefully. She needed people who were not just good soldiers, but who could think fast and adapt to anything. She picked Commander Ryan Hughes to lead the mission. Hughes had been an Army Ranger for 15 years before joining the space fleet. He was tough, smart, and never gave up. For his crew, Cross selected Lieutenant Maya Singh, who had been a Navy SEAL before becoming a tactical officer. Sergeant Major Frank Liu was chosen as chief engineer. He had been a Marine combat engineer who could build or destroy anything. Dr. Kate Williams would be the medical officer. She had been a combat medic who had saved hundreds of lives in Earth's last war. Within a week, the Defiant was ready. The ship was loaded with Earth's best weapons, medical supplies, and enough food for a year-long mission. The crew of 50 included soldiers, engineers, pilots, and scientists. The night before departure, Hughes stood on the bridge of his new ship. He looked out at Earth through the main window. Tomorrow he would leave his home planet behind and travel farther than any human had ever gone. He would meet aliens and fight enemies that humanity had never imagined. Hughes thought about the alien message. These beings, whoever they were, had listened to Earth's radio signals and decided that humans were warriors. They thought Earth was so dangerous that only the toughest creatures could survive there. Maybe they were right. Earth was a world of storms, earthquakes, volcanoes, and predators. Humans had survived ice ages, plagues, and countless wars. They had learned to fight not just each other but nature itself. If these devourers thought they could destroy entire civilizations without a fight, they had never met humans before. They were about to learn what happened when someone threatened the innocent and asked Earth's Deathworlders for help. The Defiant launched the next morning. Destination: Kepler 442. Mission: save an alien civilization and show the galaxy what humans could do. The Defiant moved through space faster than any human ship had ever traveled before. The new jump drive folded space around the ship, letting it cover vast distances in hours instead of years. But even with this amazing technology, the journey to Kepler 442 would take 3 months. Commander Hughes used this time to prepare his crew for whatever they might find. Every day the soldiers practiced combat drills. The engineers studied alien technology theories. The medical team prepared for treating unknown injuries and diseases. Lieutenant Singh ran combat training sessions in the ship's gym. She taught the crew how to fight in zero gravity, how to use weapons in spacesuits, and how to work as a team in impossible situations. "We don't know what these devourers look like," she told her trainees. "They might be bigger than us, stronger than us, or have weapons we've never seen. But we have something they don't expect. We know how to adapt." Sergeant Major Liu spent his time modifying human weapons for space combat. He worked with the ship's 3D printers to create new types of ammunition and armor. Earth's weapons were designed for fighting other humans on planets with air and gravity. Space combat would be completely different. Dr. Williams studied everything she could about alien biology. She had no idea what the aliens they were going to help would look like or what might hurt them. She prepared medical supplies for dozens of different possibilities. 2 weeks into the journey, they received another message from the Kepler 442 system. This one was much clearer than the first. The aliens had found a way to boost their signal strength. The crew gathered in the main meeting room to listen. Dr. Torres had gotten better at translating the alien language. She played the message and then explained what it meant. "The aliens call themselves the Villani," Torres said. "They're asking if we're really coming to help them. They sound desperate." The message described the devourers in more detail. They were not just one species, but many different creatures working together like a hive mind. Some were as small as insects. Others were as big as spaceships. They all shared the same goal: consume everything they found. "The Villani say the devourers don't just eat physical matter," Torres continued. "They somehow feed on life energy itself. When they finish with a planet, nothing is left alive, not even bacteria." First Officer Alex Carter, a former Air Force pilot, studied the tactical information. "The Villani have tried fighting them with conventional weapons. Lasers, missiles, plasma cannons, nothing works. The devourers just absorb the energy and get stronger." Hughes listened carefully. Earth's military was based on using overwhelming firepower to destroy enemies. If energy weapons didn't work against the devourers, they would need to find a different approach. Dr. Nina Ross, the mission's specialist in alien psychology, had been analyzing both species. "The Villani seem to be peaceful by nature," she said. "Their messages talk about harmony, cooperation, and understanding. They've probably never had to fight a real war." "What about the devourers?" Hughes asked. "They're the opposite," Ross replied. "Pure aggression and hunger. They don't seem to communicate or negotiate. They just attack and consume. As the weeks passed, more messages arrived from the Kepler 442 system. Each one brought worse news. The Volani reported that entire planets were disappearing. Their fleets were being destroyed without inflicting any damage on the enemy. One message made everyone on the Defiant angry. The Volani described how the Devourers had attacked a planet full of their children, young Volani who were not yet old enough to defend themselves. The Devourers had consumed them all. "These things are going to pay for that," Singh said quietly. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were full of controlled rage. The other soldiers nodded in agreement. Hughes knew that anger could be a powerful weapon, but it could also be dangerous. He gathered his senior officers for a private meeting. "I know everyone wants revenge for what these monsters have done," he said, "but we need to stay smart. Anger won't help us if we can't figure out how to hurt them." Carter agreed. "We need to study everything we can about both species before we arrive. The Volani are our allies, but they're not like us. We need to understand how they think and fight." Liu had been working on a new theory. "What if the problem isn't that our weapons don't work?" he suggested. "What if the problem is that we're thinking about this wrong? Maybe we don't need to destroy these things. Maybe we need to find their weakness." Williams nodded. "Every living thing has weaknesses. Even if the Devourers are some kind of hive mind, they must have limits." Ross had been studying the psychological profiles of both species. The Volani think in terms of harmony and cooperation. That's why their tactics aren't working. They try to fight the Devourers the same way they would solve any other problem, through careful planning and coordination. But humans don't think like that, Hughes realized. "We're used to chaos. We're good at improvising when plans fall apart." "Exactly," Ross said. "The Volani have advanced technology, but they've never had to deal with an enemy that doesn't follow rules. We have." The crew began training with this new understanding. Instead of practicing perfect formations and coordinated attacks, they focused on chaos management. They learned to fight when their communications were jammed, when their weapons malfunctioned, when everything went wrong. Singh created training scenarios where nothing worked as planned. Soldiers had to figure out new tactics in the middle of combat. They learned to think like humans instead of like perfectly organized aliens. 1 month before reaching Kepler 442, long-range sensors picked up something disturbing. The system looked different than it should. Where 5 planets should have been orbiting the star, they could only see 2. Carter ran the sensor data through the ship's computers multiple times. The results were always the same. 3 planets were simply gone. "The Devourers aren't just damaging these worlds," he reported to Hughes. "They're completely consuming them. There's nothing left but empty space where the planets used to be." The crew was quiet as they processed this information. They had known the Devourers were dangerous, but seeing the complete destruction of 3 entire worlds was beyond anything they had imagined. Hughes called his senior staff together one last time before they arrived at their destination. "In 4 weeks, we're going to drop out of jump space in a system where 3 planets have been eaten by monsters," he said. "We're going to meet aliens for the first time in human history, and we're going to fight an enemy that has never been defeated." He looked around the room at his officers, Singh, the former SEAL who could kill with her bare hands, Carter, the pilot who had never lost an air battle, Liu, the engineer who could build weapons from scrap metal, Williams, the medic who had saved lives under impossible conditions, Ross, the psychologist who understood how minds worked under pressure. "The Volani called for Earth's Deathworlders," Hughes continued. "They think we're the toughest species in the galaxy because we survived on a dangerous planet. Maybe they're right. Maybe growing up fighting gravity, weather, diseases, and each other made us into something special. We're about to find out if a species that learned to survive on Earth can protect the rest of the galaxy from things that eat planets." The Ray. Defiant continued its journey toward Kepler 442, carrying 50 humans into humanity's first interstellar war. The Defiant dropped out of jump space at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What the crew saw through their sensors made everyone silent with horror. 3 planets were completely gone. In their place were only debris fields of metal and rock, the inedible cores that even the Devourers couldn't consume. The remaining 2 planets were surrounded by massive space stations that looked like they were built in a hurry. "My God," Carter whispered. "They really did eat entire worlds." Commander Hughes ordered the ship to move slowly toward the inner system. They needed to make contact with the Volani. but they also needed to be ready for an attack at any moment. Lieutenant Singh scanned the area with the ship's weapon sensors. "I'm detecting movement around the fourth planet," she reported. "Large objects moving in formation. Volani ships?" Hughes asked. "I don't think so," Singh replied. "These things are huge and they're moving in a way that doesn't look like any ship design I've ever seen." Dr. Ross was monitoring communication frequencies, trying to reach the aliens who had asked for help. Finally, she picked up a transmission from one of the space stations. "This is the Volani Defense Station, Hope," the voice said through the translation equipment. "Unknown vessel, please identify yourself. Are you the warriors from the third world of Sol?" Hughes activated the ship's communication system. "This is Commander Ryan Hughes of the Earth vessel Defiant. We received your distress call. We're here to help." The response came immediately. "Praise the void. You actually came. Commander Hughes, I am Zaytar, leader of the surviving Volani forces. We have been hoping for your arrival, but we feared you would not make it in time." Hughes arranged to meet with Zaytar aboard the Volani station. He took Dr. Ross and Dr. Torres with him, leaving Carter in command of the Defiant. The shuttle trip to the Volani station gave Hughes his first close look at an alien structure. The station was beautiful, made of flowing curves and graceful arcs that looked more like art than military construction. It was completely different from the angular, practical designs that humans preferred. Inside the station, Hughes met his first aliens. The Volani were tall and thin, with long limbs and large eyes that seemed to glow with their own light. Their skin was pale and smooth, almost translucent. They moved gracefully but looked fragile. Zaytar greeted them in a large room filled with other Volani. Hughes was surprised to see that many of them appeared to be injured. Some had missing limbs. Others had what looked like burn marks on their skin. "Commander Hughes," Zaytar said through a translation device, "we are honored by your presence. We have studied your species through your broadcasts. We know you are warriors from a death world. We hope you can succeed where we have failed." Hughes looked around the room. "What exactly are we fighting?" Zaytar activated a display that showed images of the Devourers. Hughes felt his stomach turn as he saw the creatures for the first time. They looked like a nightmare combination of organic and mechanical parts. Some had multiple heads, others had limbs that ended in cutting tools instead of hands. All of them had the same dead, hungry look in their eyes. "The Devourers came to our system 6 months ago," Zaytar explained. "At first, there were only a few scout ships. We tried to communicate with them, to understand what they wanted. They responded by attacking our outermost planet." The display showed the attack. Thousands of Devourer creatures swarmed over the planet's surface while their ships blocked out the sun. Within hours, all life on the planet was gone. "We sent our fleet to stop them," Zaytar continued. "Our ships fired every weapon we had. Nothing worked. The Devourers absorbed our energy weapons and used them to grow stronger. They destroyed our entire battle fleet without taking any damage." Dr. Ross leaned forward. "How many of you are left?" Zaytar's large eyes dimmed. "Of the 15 billion Volani who lived in this system, only 2 million survive. Most are on the space stations. The rest are hiding in underground shelters on our remaining worlds." Hughes felt anger building inside him. These peaceful beings had been nearly wiped out by monsters that killed for food. "Show me current Devourer positions." The display changed to show the present situation. Hundreds of Devourer ships were spread throughout the system. Most were grouped around the 2 remaining planets, slowly consuming everything they could find. "They're getting ready to attack our last worlds," Zaytar said. "Our calculations show they will begin the final assault in 3 days." Hughes activated his communication device. "Carter, we need to get back to the ship immediately. Prepare all combat teams for immediate deployment." As they prepared to leave, alarms started going off throughout the Volani station. Zaytar looked at a display and his face filled with panic. "Devourer scouts," he announced. "A hunting pack is attacking Refugee Convoy 7. Hughes didn't hesitate. "Where?" 15 minutes away at maximum speed," Zaytar replied. "Carter, launch all shuttles immediately," Hughes commanded over his communicator. "Combat teams Alpha and Beta, full space gear. We're going into battle." The trip back to the Defiant took 5 minutes. By the time they arrived, Singh had already loaded 20 soldiers into shuttles and was ready to launch. Hughes jumped into his combat suit and joined the first shuttle. The refugee convoy was a group of Volani civilian ships trying to evacuate survivors from one of the stations. They were slow and defenseless, The Devourer scouts had surrounded them like wolves attacking sheep. Hughes got his first close look at Devourer creatures as his shuttle approached the battle. They were even more horrifying in person than in the pictures. Some looked like giant spiders with metal legs. Others were snake-like creatures covered in armor plates. All of them moved with the same predatory grace. Alpha Team, target the creatures attacking the largest civilian ship, Singh commanded over the radio. Beta Team, cover the convoy's retreat. The human soldiers opened fire with their plasma rifles and projectile weapons. For a moment, Hughes thought they were making progress. Several Devourer creatures seemed to be damaged by the human weapons. But then the creatures began to regenerate. The damage healed itself within seconds. The Devourers turned their attention from the Volani ships to the human shuttles. Our weapons aren't working, shouted Sergeant Troy Adams from Beta Team. Hughes watched in horror as a Devourer creature attached itself to Adams' shuttle. The thing began draining energy from the shuttle's systems. The lights went out and the engines stopped working, but then something unexpected happened. The Devourer creature suddenly pulled back from the shuttle as if it had been hurt. It made a sound that Hughes had never heard before, like a scream of pain mixed with confusion. Adams, what happened? Hughes asked over the radio. I don't know, sir, Adams replied. The thing touched the shuttle, started draining power, then suddenly let go and backed away. It acted like it was scared of something. Dr. Williams, who was monitoring the shuttle's systems, made a discovery that changed everything. Commander, I'm reading unusual electromagnetic activity from Adams' shuttle. The patterns match human brainwave activity. Hughes understood immediately. The creature was trying to feed on the shuttle's energy, but it got a taste of human neural activity instead. Singh, who had been listening to the conversation, suddenly had an idea. All teams switch to physical contact weapons. Get close to these things and let them touch you. It sounded like suicide, but Hughes trusted Singh's instincts. Do it, he ordered. The human soldiers abandoned their energy weapons and drew knives, clubs, and other hand-to-hand combat tools. They flew their shuttles directly at the Devourer creatures. What happened next shocked everyone, including the Devourers. When the creatures tried to drain energy from humans, they recoiled as if they had been burned. The human soldiers were able to cut and stab the creatures while they were confused and weakened. Within 10 minutes, all the Devourer scouts were dead or retreating. The Volani convoy was saved. As the shuttles returned to the Defiant, Hughes tried to understand what had happened. Dr. Williams ran immediate tests on all the soldiers who had made physical contact with the Devourers. The creatures feed on life, energy, she explained to Hughes and his senior staff. But human life energy is different from Volani energy. Our brains evolved on Earth dealing with constant threats and stress. We generate bioelectric patterns that are toxic to the Devourers. Singh smiled for the first time since they had arrived in the system. We're not just immune to their feeding mechanism. We're poisonous to them. Hughes realized that humanity had just found its role in the Galactic War against the Devourers. Earth's Deathworlders weren't just tough fighters. They were walking weapons against creatures that fed on life itself. News of the human victory spread quickly among the surviving Volani. For the first time in months, they had hope. The creatures that had seemed unstoppable could be hurt. They could be killed. Commander Hughes gathered his crew and the Volani leaders to plan their next move. The discovery that human neural patterns were toxic to the Devourers changed everything, but they needed to turn this advantage into a real weapon. Sergeant Major Liu worked with Volani scientists to understand exactly how the effect worked. Dr. Williams ran tests on human volunteers, measuring their brain activity during different emotional states. The effect is strongest when humans are angry or afraid, Williams reported. Combat stress makes our neural patterns even more toxic to the Devourers. So the madder we get, the more dangerous we become to them? Singh asked. Exactly, Williams replied. And considering what these things have done to innocent people, I don't think anger will be a problem. Liu had been experimenting with ways to weaponize the human neural patterns. I think I can build ammunition that carries copies of human brainwave activity, he explained. Every bullet would be like injecting poison directly into these creatures. The Volani provided Liu with advanced manufacturing equipment. Within 2 days, he had produced several thousand rounds of the new ammunition. Each bullet contained a microcircuit that broadcasted human neural patterns. Hughes divided his crew into specialized combat teams. Singh would lead Alpha Team, focusing on direct combat against Devourer creatures. Carter would command Beta Team, specializing in protecting Villani civilians and installations. But they knew that 50 humans, even with their new weapons, couldn't fight thousands of Devourers across an entire star system. They needed Villani help. "Can your people fight alongside us?" Hughes asked Zaytar. Zaytar looked uncertain. "The Villani are not warriors by nature, Commander. We have soldiers, but they think very differently from humans." Dr. Ross had been studying the differences between human and Villani thinking patterns. "The Villani approach problems logically," she explained. "They make careful plans and follow them precisely. That works well for most things, but combat is chaos. We need to teach them to think more like humans," Hughes decided, "at least in combat situations." The training program began immediately. Villani volunteers worked with human soldiers to learn new tactics. Instead of careful formations and predetermined plans, they practiced adapting to rapidly changing situations. The cultural differences were enormous. Villani soldiers were used to coordinating perfectly with their teammates through advanced communication systems. Human soldiers were used to improvising when communications failed and plans fell apart. "The key is not to think," Singh told a group of Villani trainees. "When something unexpected happens, don't try to analyze it. Just react based on your training and instincts." This was incredibly difficult for the logical Villani minds to understand, but gradually some of them began to grasp the concept. They learned to turn off their analytical thinking during combat and rely on instinct instead. Liu also worked on creating devices that could mimic human neural patterns. Villani soldiers who wore these devices could hurt Devourers with conventional weapons, though the effect wasn't as strong as direct contact with humans. 3 days after the first battle, long-range sensors detected massive movement throughout the system. The Devourers were preparing for their final assault on the remaining Villani worlds. "Thousands of them," Carter reported. "Maybe tens of thousands, all converging on Villani Prime." Villani Prime was the species' homeworld. Over 1 million Villani civilians lived there, mostly in underground cities designed to protect them from the Devourers. But the creatures had learned to dig. Hughes made the hardest decision of his military career. "We're going to defend Villani Prime," he announced. "All teams, all ships, everything we have," Zaytar protested. "Commander, there are too many of them. Your people will be killed." "Maybe," Hughes replied. "But we didn't come here to run away when things got difficult." The human crews prepared for the largest space battle in their species' history. The Defiant took position in orbit around Villani Prime, along with every Villani ship that could still fight. It wasn't many, maybe 30 vessels against thousands of Devourer creatures. Singh took her Alpha team down to the planet's surface in shuttles. If any Devourers made it through the space battle, they would have to fight the humans on the ground. The first wave of Devourers arrived 12 hours later. They came from every direction, moving in swarms that blocked out the stars. Some were small and fast, others were massive creatures the size of buildings. Carter coordinated the space battle from the Defiant's bridge. The Villani ships fought bravely, but their weapons were still mostly ineffective against the Devourers. The real fighting was done by the human ships and shuttles. The battle was chaos, exactly the kind of situation humans had evolved to handle. While the Villani tried to maintain formation and follow their battle plans, the human pilots flew wild, unpredictable attack patterns that confused the Devourers. Liu's new ammunition proved devastatingly effective. Every hit from a human weapon caused severe damage to the Devourer creatures, but there were so many enemies that even the improved weapons couldn't stop them all. "Breakthrough in Sector 4, Carter announced. "Hundreds of small Devourers are heading for the planet's surface." Singh's ground teams were ready. They had set up defensive positions around the major Villani cities, using the underground tunnel systems to move quickly between battle zones. The ground battle was even more intense than the space combat. Devourer creatures poured from the sky like rain, landing anywhere they could find life to consume. But this time, they met humans who were ready for them. Singh led her team through the tunnels under Villani Prime's capital city. The fighting was close and personal, exactly the way humans preferred it. In the narrow tunnels, the Devourer's size advantage was negated, and human aggressiveness became a decisive factor. "These things are used to enemies that run away," Singh told her soldiers over the radio. "They don't know how to handle predators that fight back." The battle lasted 18 hours. Wave after wave of Devourers attacked the planet and the orbital defenses. Human casualties were heavy, They lost 15 people, including 3 shuttle crews and half of Beta Team. But for the first time since the Devourers had arrived in the system, they were forced to retreat. Thousands of the creatures had been killed or wounded. More importantly, they had learned that their prey could fight back. The most significant loss was Sergeant Major Liu. His shuttle was overwhelmed while he was trying to evacuate Villani civilians from an attacked city. He stayed behind to cover the evacuation, fighting hand-to-hand with Devourer creatures until his ammunition ran out. He saved 800 Villani lives, Carter reported to Hughes after the battle. The civilians got away because Liu held the line. Hughes felt the familiar pain of losing good soldiers. But he also felt pride. Liu had died the way he had lived, protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Dr. Williams treated the wounded in the Defiance medical bay. Several humans had been injured by Devourer weapons, but they had also learned something important. Humans healed faster from Devourer attacks than other species did. It's the same neural compatibility effect, Williams explained. The Devourer's weapons are designed to drain life energy. Since human life energy is toxic to them, their weapons are less effective against us. The victory at Villani Prime changed the entire war. For the first time, a Devourer assault had been completely defeated. Word spread to other systems where the creatures had been attacking. Species across the galaxy began sending messages to Earth, asking for help. But Hughes and his crew knew this was just the beginning. The Devourers they had fought were just a scouting force. Intelligence gathered from captured creature technology showed that the main hive fleet was much larger and more dangerous. Zytar brought Hughes disturbing news from the Villani's deep space monitoring stations. Commander, we have detected massive movement in the void between galaxies. The main Devourer fleet is coming. There are millions of them. Hughes looked at his remaining crew. 35 humans against millions of creatures that had consumed entire civilizations across multiple galaxies. The odds were impossible, but the crew of the Defiant had never worried about odds. They were humans from Earth, a planet that had taught them to fight against impossible enemies and win. How long until they arrive? Hughes asked. 6 months, maybe less, Zytar replied. Hughes activated the ship's communication system and sent a message toward Earth. It would take years to reach home, but he wanted his people to know what was coming. This is Commander Hughes of the Defiant. We have made contact with a hostile alien force that threatens all life in the galaxy. We need reinforcements. Send everything Earth has. Send every ship, every soldier, every weapon we can build. The galaxy needs its Deathworlders. The main Devourer fleet arrived ahead of schedule. Long-range sensors detected them while they were still 3 months away from the Kepler 442 system. What the humans and Villani saw on their screens was beyond their worst nightmares. The fleet filled space like a dark cloud, millions of creatures, some the size of asteroids, all moving with the same terrible purpose. At the center of the swarm was something so massive that it bent space around itself, the Devourer hive mind. Dr. Ross analyzed the formation and made a disturbing discovery. They're not just coming to finish consuming this system, she told Commander Hughes. Based on their trajectory, they're planning to move on to other populated areas of the galaxy after they're done here. Hughes studied the tactical display. Even with all the Villani ships and the human reinforcements that had arrived from other Earth missions, they had maybe 100 vessels. The Devourers had millions. We can't win a straight fight, he admitted to his senior staff. But maybe we don't need to. Dr. Williams had been studying captured Devourer technology with the help of Villani scientists. What they discovered changed their understanding of the enemy completely. The individual creatures aren't really alive in the way we understand life, Williams explained. They're more like organs in a massive body. The real intelligence is the hive mind, that giant structure at the center of their fleet. So if we destroy the hive mind, Carter began, the individual creatures would become just animals. Williams finished. Dangerous animals, but without coordination or intelligence. Hughes looked at the tactical display again. The hive mind was surrounded by millions of Devourer creatures. Getting to it would require fighting through the largest army in galactic history. Lieutenant Singh had a different idea. What if we don't fight our way to it? What if we sneak up on it? Sneak up on something the size of a moon? Carter asked. Not sneak up, Singh clarified. Get inside. The hive mind has to have some kind of internal structure. If we can get a small team inside, we might be able to damage it from within. Dr. Ross supported the plan. The Devourers are a hive mind. They think as one organism. They're not used to dealing with individual agents acting independently inside their own structure. Hughes realized what they were talking about. It was a suicide mission. A small team would have to somehow get through millions of hostile creatures, infiltrate a structure the size of a moon, and attack the central intelligence that controlled the entire Devourer species. It's insane, he said quietly. Yes, Singh agreed. It's completely insane. That's why it might work. The Devourers expect logical, predictable tactics. They've never faced a species crazy enough to try something like this. Hughes gathered volunteers for the mission. Every human on the Defiant volunteered immediately. So did most of the Villani soldiers who had learned to fight alongside them. The plan was complex but simple. The main human and Villani fleets would engage the outer edges of the Devourer swarm, drawing their attention. Meanwhile, a small team would use captured Devourer technology to disguise their ship and approach the hive mind directly. Liu's replacement, Chief Engineer Danny Price, had been working on the ultimate version of the human neural weapon. Instead of individual bullets, he had created a device that could broadcast human thought patterns on a massive scale. It's like a neural bomb, Price explained. If we can get this device inside the hive mind and detonate it, every Devourer creature connected to the network will be hit with pure human consciousness. What will that do to them? Hughes asked. Williams answered. Based on our tests, exposure to large amounts of human neural activity causes complete nervous system breakdown in Devourer creatures. They literally can't handle the way we think. The infiltration team consisted of Hughes, Singh, Carter, Price, and Dr. Williams, 5 humans who would carry humanity's hopes into the heart of the enemy. The disguised ship was a modified Devourer scout vessel that had been captured during the battle for Villani Prime. Villani technology had altered its energy signature to match the hive mind's control frequencies. As the team prepared to launch, Zaytar brought them one final piece of intelligence. Commander, our deep space monitors have detected something else. Earth ships are coming. Hughes felt a surge of hope. How many? We count at least 50 human vessels, Zaytar replied. Your people received your message and responded. They're still 2 months away, but they're coming. The knowledge that Earth was sending reinforcements gave Hughes the motivation he needed for the suicide mission. If his team could disable the hive mind, the arriving human fleet would find millions of confused, uncoordinated creatures instead of a unified army. The infiltration began during the main battle. Human and Villani ships engaged the outer layers of the Devourer swarm, drawing millions of creatures away from the hive mind. The fighting was fierce, but it gave Hughes's team the distraction they needed. The disguised ship passed through 3 layers of Devourer defenders without being detected. The creature's own technology was working against them. They couldn't tell the difference between their scout ship and the human-modified version. Up close, the hive mind was even more terrifying than the sensors had indicated. It was a living structure that pulsed with organic light. Thousands of smaller creatures swarmed around it like antibodies protecting a vital organ. There, Williams pointed to what looked like an opening in the hive mind's surface, some kind of intake port. If we can get inside there. Hughes piloted the ship toward the opening. As they got closer, they could see that the interior was like a vast organic tunnel system. The walls pulsed with veins that carried energy and information throughout the structure. The team left their ship and moved deeper into the hive mind on foot. They wore special suits that masked their human life signs, but they knew the disguise wouldn't last long. The hive mind was too intelligent and too sensitive. They had to fight their way through the tunnel system as defensive creatures began to realize they were intruders. But the confined space worked in the humans' favor. In the narrow tunnels, human aggressiveness and adaptability were more important than raw numbers. The central chamber should be just ahead, Price announced, checking his scanner. They broke through the final barrier to find themselves in a vast space at the heart of the hive mind. The walls were covered with organic computers that processed information from millions of Devourer creatures across the galaxy. At the center was a massive brain-like structure that pulsed with alien intelligence. This is it, Hughes said. The thing that's been coordinating the destruction of entire civilizations. Price activated the neural bomb device. I need 2 minutes to set the broadcast parameters, he said. But they didn't have 2 minutes. Devourer creatures began pouring into the chamber from every entrance. Hughes, Singh, Carter, and Williams formed a defensive line around Price, fighting desperately to buy him the time he needed. The creatures seemed to understand what the humans were trying to do. They attacked with desperate fury, trying to stop the neural bomb before it could be activated. Carter was overwhelmed by a group of spider-like creatures. He fought them off with his bare hands, but took severe wounds in the process. "Get that bomb working," he shouted to Price. Singh and Hughes fought back-to-back, their weapons cutting down creature after creature. But there were too many. Williams was pulled down by a snake-like devourer and had to be rescued by Singh. "Done," Price announced. "Everyone grab onto something solid." He activated the neural bomb. The device began broadcasting pure human consciousness directly into the hive mind's central processor. The effect was immediate and devastating. The organic computers began shutting down as they were overwhelmed by human thought patterns. The brain-like central structure started convulsing, unable to process the chaotic, violent, individualistic thoughts that humans generated naturally. Throughout the galaxy, millions of devourer creatures suddenly stopped following orders. The hive mind connection was broken, replaced by the toxic influence of human neural activity. The creatures in the chamber began attacking each other instead of the humans. The coordinated assault turned into random violence as each creature started acting independently. Hughes and his team fought their way back to their ship as the hive mind structure began to collapse around them. They escaped just as the central brain finally shut down completely, ending the devourer threat forever. When they returned to the main fleet, they found the battle was already over. Without coordination from the hive mind, the devourer creatures had turned on each other. The species that had consumed civilizations across multiple galaxies had destroyed itself. 2 months later, Earth's reinforcement fleet arrived in the Kepler 442 system. Admiral Cross herself led 50 of humanity's most advanced warships, ready to fight the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. Instead, she found her people being celebrated as heroes by grateful Villani and representatives from dozens of other alien species. Word of humanity's victory had spread across the galaxy, faster than anyone had expected. Hughes stood on the bridge of the Defiant and watched the Earth fleet arrive. He thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that first distress call to the final battle in the heart of the hive mind. The galaxy had called Earth's Deathworlders for help, and humanity had